And we are back. Welcome back to the Premier League prediction series for another brand new season. It is finally time for Game Week 1 starting tonight. And a special welcome to all of you who are listening to predictions for the first time. Yes, for this season, for the major competitions, I'm not only going to be posting these predictions on YouTube, but I'm also going to be posting them on all podcast platforms. So wherever you are in the world, whether you're out or about or at home where you normally watch my prediction series, you are going to be able to digest every single prediction that we do over the course of this season. Not only that, anyone that is in the UK and Ireland will have the opportunity to compete against me to see who truly is the king of queen of predictions by joining my Super 6 mini league with the code available for you on screen right now. JEYKGC is the code to join my Sky Sports Super 6 mini league, and there will be a link, of course, to that down in the description below. Not only that, we're running a whole host of other competitions over the course of this season. Firstly, my FPL mini league. More on that available on my SO99 gaming channel, because that is my home of FPL this season. And also, if you missed last week, or should I say earlier in this week's full Premier League table prediction, you can take part in that by joining my FUT Mob League Predictor mini league as well. So plenty for you lot to get involved in this season. If you're ready for Game Week 1, let me know by smashing a like on this video and subscribing to the channel if you're new around here. As I've already mentioned, we're going to be doing a whole host of predictions across a multitude of competitions this season, starting off now with the Premier League and then ending in the summer with both the Women's Euros and the Club World Cup. And without any further ado, like I say, whether you're watching at home or listening anywhere around the world on one of the podcast services, let's get into it. Premier League Game Week 1, which starts tonight with Manchester United against Fulham. However, before we get into that, for those of you who are watching, you will see that there is something else that I have added to the visuals this year, and that is I am going to be tracking every single prediction I make in every single competition this season. So already we have done the Community Shield and the opening round of the Carabao Cup, which means we've already made 36 predictions for this season so far, and I've got 23 right, with 4 of them being actually correct scores, all coming from the Carabao Cup on Tuesday evening. So what this is for is to sort of prove to you guys what I'm capable of. It may work as a negative for me if I don't do very well, but I want to do this sort of as a challenge to myself to try and keep this figure as close to, I would say, 70 to 80% as possible. And considering that I've had 35 first round Carabao Cup fixtures, I'm going to take 23 out of 36 for the first week so far. But also you'll see that I'm also going to be tracking my Prem results and my Prem scores as well. That is how we're going to be operating this season. Hopefully it's going to make it a little bit more enjoyable and gives you guys the opportunity to see how you fare against me as well, if you want to keep track of your own scores as well. And if you do want to compete against each other, you can also go on my community page, where there will be options for each of the 10 Premier League fixtures taking place this weekend, where you can have your say on who is going to win each and every fixture. So, back to Manchester United against Fulham. My club, Manchester United, opening the Premier League season this time around. And it is Fulham at home, which is a game that we lost last season. So, that's already a slight concern. Couple that with the minor injury crisis that has already begun, and it could be a really difficult start for Manchester United. The only thing that's working against Fulham is the fact that they sold João Palhinha and got rid of Tosin Adarabioyo, and they're yet to replace either of them. The only signing they've made so far this summer is Emile Smith-Rowe. There's obviously a lot of talk about Scott McTominay moving from Manchester United to Fulham. I think the expectation is that that deal will go through after tonight, because the whole point is Manchester United don't want McTominay playing against them. I believe Manchester United are going to get things off with a win. They played really well in the Community Shield, and if it wasn't for a lapse in concentration in the last minute of the match, they would have won the Community Shield against Manchester City. So I'm going to go for 2-1. I can still see Fulham getting a goal. It's just fingers crossed United get their goal-scoring boots on and get the goals that they need to get the win. But I'm going for United to kick off the Premier League season with a victory at Old Trafford tonight. On to tomorrow, and the first game of Saturday is newly promoted Ipswich Town taking on Arne Slot's Liverpool in the early kickoff on a Saturday. Somewhere Jurgen Klopp is going to be still moaning about Liverpool playing a game early on a Saturday. But it is what it is. We obviously all know about Ipswich's exploits, getting back-to-back promotions. They're going to be well up for this. They're going to want to prove their credentials, and especially Kieran McKenna. But also Arne Slot's going to want to be proving his credentials as Liverpool manager. And unfortunately for Ipswich, I have a feeling they're going to go for it. And they're going to get a rude awakening with the ability that Liverpool have available to them. I'm going to go for 4-1 to Liverpool. I do expect Ipswich to cause problems because defensively in pre-season, Liverpool haven't looked great. They've just looked very, very good going forward. And I can see that being how this game goes. Don't forget Ipswich, top scorers in the Championship last season. So we'll see how it goes. For me, though, Liverpool will end up taking this one pretty comfortably. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs. And the first of those is Arsenal, the would-be title challengers, once again taking on Wolves, and Gary O'Neill has once again lost his key player from last season. Pedro Neto has now gone to Chelsea, but it is still Wolves. They're a very well-organised team. I do like Gary O'Neill. I think he can set his side out in a way to try and cause Arsenal problems, but ultimately, I think if you'd have offered Arsenal Wolves as their opening fixture for the season, they would have bit your hand off. No pun intended, with obviously the Wolves normally being the team with the bite. But for me, this is Arsenal's game to lose. I'm going to go for 2-0. I could see it being more. I think it would be a surprise if Wolves did get a goal. We know how good Arsenal are defensively, and they're going to want to set out their stall in this opening game of the season. So I'm going to go for 2-0 to Arsenal. Then we have Everton taking on Brighton. Two sides who I said in my Premier League predictions table video would both be fighting relegation this season. However, in the last 24 hours, I think Brighton have done a lot of good business. They've paid the release clause for Jorginho Ruter from Leeds. It looks like they're near to agreeing a deal for Kadioglu from Fenerbahce, one of the standout players of the Euros for me. So Brighton are starting to do their business, starting to spend the money that they've built up over the last couple of seasons pretty well. They've also had a fantastic pre-season. Everton, we know about them. It's going to be about defensive outlay and then trying to get forward and cause problems. I think it's going to be a really tight game. The question mark is just going to be about where are the goals going to come from either of these sides. I'm actually still going to go for a 2-2 draw, which might be a little bit stupid. There's probably more chance of this being 0-0 than there is 2-2. I probably think Brighton would also have to be considered the favourites, considering the players they've signed and how they've looked in pre-season. But for me, I think Goodison Park, opening game of the season, they're not going to want to end it in misery. It's obviously Everton's last season at Goodison as well. So I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I think whatever happens, this game is probably going to be a draw. 0-0, 1-1, 2-2, we'll see. But I'm going for the 2-2 draw. Next up, it's another promoted side. Southampton, they travel to St James's Park. Newcastle, of course, with arguably the best position of any of the teams that are going to be competing for Europe this season, because they're not in Europe this season. So their primary focus is purely going to be on getting themselves back to where they want to be this season. They're not going to have to play the 8 additional fixtures that the European sides are going to have to play. So we'll see how that ends up for them. And again, if you'd have offered them Southampton at home in the opening fixture, I think Newcastle would have bit your hand off. And they're going to be free-flowing. They're going to be attacking. They've got the majority of their players fit. Again, some question marks over the defence. Obviously, Sandro Tonali is going to be back in the side in a couple of weeks' time as well. I think they're going to be ready to go. I think for Southampton, it's going to be a tough one. I'm going to go 3-1 to Newcastle. I can still see Southampton causing them defensive problems. Southampton do play good football, but if Newcastle don't win this one, it'll be a massive surprise. The final 3 o'clock fixture sees Nottingham Forest taking on AFC Bournemouth. And the question around this one really is, can Evan Nilsson get signed in time so he can get registered to play in this game? Because I think if he can, that gives Bournemouth a little bit more of a chance of getting something from this game. I think if they go into this match without a recognised striker, it would probably be Semenyo that goes in up front, who I do rate as a football player. I think he's very talented, and I nearly put him in my fantasy football team. But I think no Solanke, no Evan Nilsson for this game. There really is no excuses for Nottingham Forest not to come away from this game with a clean sheet. Obviously, as well, Nottingham Forest, I think they've got a very good attacking outlook now. I think with Wood up front, with Gibbs White, Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, and Elliot Anderson all available to them, I think they can cause some problems this season. And I think this is a good fixture for them to open the season with, and a good opportunity for them to get points on the board early. And like I said, without Bournemouth having a recognised striker, I think Forest could end up getting a clean sheet as well. So I'm going for 2-0 to Nottingham Forest over AFC Bournemouth. The final game on Saturday, the 5:30 kickoff, sees West Ham United under Julian Lopetegui taking on Aston Villa. Two sides that have done a lot of business this summer, be it ins and outs, lots of money spent on both fronts. And the question is, who has assembled the better team going into this season? And I think if this game was at Villa Park, I would definitely go for Aston Villa to get the win. But with it being at the London Stadium, I'm definitely going to give West Ham more of an opportunity. This is arguably the toughest game to call this weekend because there's so many unknown factors surrounding this West Ham starting lineup, as in who is even going to be in it, and then who, if all the new signings are in it, have they efficiently gelled enough to do what they need to do? I don't think they're going to have enough to beat Villa, but I think this is going to be a bit of a wake-up call for Aston Villa. Their first proper match with Douglas Luiz out that midfield, who is usually the calming and controlling presence. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, but watch this space. I think all three results available in this one. From Saturday then, we move on to Sunday, and the opening game on Sunday, with the greatest of respects to both teams, is Brentford Crystal Palace, which I'm a bit surprised about. I know they want to give coverage to all of the teams this season, but Brentford Crystal Palace, which is a mid to bottom of the table clash at best as the first game of the first Sunday of the season, I'm a little bit surprised about, but hopefully it's going to be an entertaining affair. Both sides have talented, attack-minded players available to them. Obviously, Brentford with the likes of Mbeumo, Fabio Silva coming into the side, Palace with Eza now signing Ismail Assar and Daichi Kamada. Will Jean-Philippe Mateta be starting for Crystal Palace? In my opinion, he should, because in theory he should be the sharpest player in the Premier League after how well he did at the Olympics. And with that all said, I actually think Crystal Palace are probably the better side for this match. Obviously, huge question marks over Gahey's future, question marks over Anderson's future. If both of them don't play due to concerns over their future, Brentford become the massive favourites. But I'm going off the expectation that all of Palace's best available players are going to play. And then on paper for me, Crystal Palace are the favourites. Under Glasner, they've been fantastic. Brentford, I think, are going to struggle this season, as I mentioned in my table prediction. And I'm going to go for 2-1 to Crystal Palace. Again, maybe a bit of a rogue shout, that one. But I do believe that Crystal Palace are going to start this season where they ended off at the end of last season. That then brings us to the main event of the weekend. The main prime time spot, the 4:30 kickoff. Chelsea take on defending champions, four-time defending champions, Manchester City in Enzo Maresca's first game in charge, taking on Pep Guardiola. So, a lot on the line on this one. It's an opportunity for both sides to set out a real marker for what they're going to do this season. Historically, Manchester City don't start the season well. We saw it in the Community Shield. They did not look good, albeit they did have several key players missing. How many of those key players are going to be back for this game? Is Pep going to put in all of those players that played the last games of their major tournaments? Foden, Walker, Stones, Rodri, etc. Are we going to see them all come back into the team? I would expect the likes of De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva to come straight back into the team, but how many others are going to join them? Then for Chelsea, who's going to play in every single position? I think we can assume that Cole Palmer's going to play. I think we can assume that Cucurella's going to play. But other than that, it's a free-for-all for Chelsea. Who knows what's going to happen? They've got so much attacking and arguably defensive talent available to them now. What sort of setup is Maresca going to play? Obviously, these two sides played just last week in pre-season, and it was a 4-2 win to Man City with Erling Haaland scoring a hat-trick. So they've already felt each other out a little bit. But like I said, City didn't have a lot of players available then. Chelsea hadn't made a few more new signings, which they're going to have available for this one. So really, this one's completely up in the air. Got to also remember that when these two sides met last season, it was 1-1 and 4-4. So 2 draws. Anything could happen. It's a different manager for Chelsea. It's going to be a different style of approach. But I still think City are going to come out on top. I'm going to go for 3-2. One less than it was in the pre-season match a couple of weeks ago. But I think City recognise how big a threat they've got from Arsenal this season. And even when Arsenal win on Saturday, they're going to know they have to win on Sunday. And that is what Man City do. They turn up and get the results when they need to. And I think they're going to need to in this opening fixture away to Chelsea. Finally then, we have the Monday Night Football as the final promoted side. The Championship champions, Leicester City, take on Big Angie's Tottenham Hotspur. And Again, I think this is a quite difficult one to call. I think Leicester probably could have done a little bit better in the transfer market. They've obviously lost their manager to Chelsea. They've lost their star player to Chelsea. But they brought Steve Cooper in, who is a manager that I think is all right. I think, like I said, they probably could have done better in the transfer market. Tottenham have obviously spent big on Archie Gray and Dominic Solanke. I think they're in a much better position to start this season than what Leicester are. But the Foxes are going to be looking to lay down their own marker. They're at home. It's going to be under the lights. And they're not going to want to lose that opening game. They've got used to winning last season. There's going to be an expectation on Steve Cooper to come in and produce a performance with this side that is expectant of this Leicester team that no one expected to get relegated 2 seasons ago. The fans are not going to be expecting to get relegated again this season. And they're going to look at a game against Spurs and go, if we're as serious as we think we are, we need to get a result against Spurs. But ultimately, I don't see it happening. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Tottenham in the final game of the opening weekend of the season. And that is going to be that. That is all 10 predictions for Game Week 1 in the Premier League. Don't forget to join my Super 6 Mini League with the code that's been available to you on screen throughout the entirety of this video. And for those of you listening, will be available in the description of the podcast. Thank you very much for watching as always. The Premier League is back. Football is back. I will be back tonight at the full-time whistle of Manchester United against Fulham to give you my post-match thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again tonight.